What are some interesting crimes that were never solved? The Hinterkaifeck murders. On a remote farm in Germany, a family starts seeing strange things around the property, like a newspaper that's from a town hundreds of miles away, missing keys, footsteps in the attic, and footprints in the snow leading to the house, but not away. Days later, they are found to have been murdered one by one with the mattocks during the night. The weird part is there are obvious signs the killer lived at the property for several days after killing them. He took care of the chores and animals, and only left maybe hours before the bodies were found by the townsfolk, if that. Right now, the case of Duane Simms, a little boy missing since 1994, has taken an interesting turn. A man has come forward claiming to be Duane, but it's not determined yet. I saw the picture of the guy next to a photo of Duane, and they look nothing alike. Not a well-known one, but the body in the reservoir. A man is discovered on the banks of a reservoir in Brazil by a young boy. When they performed the post-mortem, they found his organs had been harvested to the point where his chest has caved in. He was missing his eyes and tongue. He had symmetrical holes in his armpits, likely where his organs were harvested from. He had been castrated and had a thick hole bored into where his rectum was. He had an edema in his brain but no damage to his skull and no anesthetic in his system, which suggests he was alive, conscious and not under any anesthetic while this was done to him. He likely died from the trauma to the brain, as opposed to one single injury. While I don't believe this, it's like he was collected by aliens, his organs collected by some kind of machinery and dumped somewhere remote. All I can think is that he either died or was killed and then feasted upon by vultures, which might account for the organs and holes in his skin. But still, why he was there, what happened to him, and who would inflict such brutal injuries to a seemingly innocent man and dump him in plain sight? TL, Dr. Man suffers about 1 million different horrific injuries while alive and conscious and dumped on a reservoir. No one knows what the fuck happened to him. Most obvious would be Jack the Ripper and Madeleine McCann. I heard about one but can't remember it in great detail. There was a family who mysteriously disappeared without a trace, and when police investigated their house all they found was a small amount of broken glass on the front porch. Nothing else out of order. A man eventually approached the police and said the family was gone and he believed they would never come back. He was temporarily arrested on suspicion of murdering them, but was released when police could find no evidence against him. To this day it is unknown whether he was responsible or not. By far the most interesting unsolved crime I know of was the shooting of Olaf Palme. Olaf wasn't just some random dude, he was Sweden's prime minister, and he was shot on a city street late at night while walking with his wife. I remember watching a documentary saying that several men were following up with walkie-talkies. Theories have suggested the KGB, CIA, Kurds, white supremacists, the Indian Army, Iran, fascists, drug dealers, the Swedish government, or just some random guy. Otherwise, the death of Charles C. Morgan is pretty suspicious. Here's a video on it. He was an Arizona guy in the 1970s, and at first he was kidnapped, then came home unable to speak and handcuffed claiming to be a secret agent. He disappeared again and was found shot in the back of the head near his car, which had his tooth inside, ammunition, a revolver, and strapped to his underwear. On his body was a $2 note with a lot of suspicious writing on it indicating smuggling routes and Bible verses. My rural community has had nationwide attention for a missing person case from almost 25 years ago. Jodi Hoiert was a local news anchor who disappeared early one morning in June of 1995. I was in elementary school when it happened, but I still remember that day. It seemed for months after that everyone in the area was scared. Things like that just don't happen in small-town Iowa. I still can't quite wrap my head around the fact that such a thing happened 15 miles away from where I've lived my entire life. Here in Nova we have the rape and murder of Eva Roy. A 14-year-old girl was brutally raped and murdered in 1918 in Burke, Virginia. The police and the people who found her botched the investigation immediately by contaminating and moving stuff around at the crime scene. Suspicion fell on a local man named Lou Hall, who had come home the previous day covered in blood and claimed to have been killing pigs all day. He was arrested for the crime when at the same time another man confessed to the murder who already had a criminal record. The local police decided to charge both men with the crime, even though neither man had ever met each other. The other man eventually admitted he confessed because he had escaped from prison and wanted the death penalty rather than be sent back to that prison. As for Hall, he was tried but ultimately acquitted. The police arrested a few more suspects, primarily because they had the bad luck of not being white in 1918 Virginia, but ultimately nobody was ever convicted of Eva Roy's murder. Side note, I'm actually related to Lou Hall, and to this day my family is convinced he did it and got away with it. Natalie Holloway. I feel like Joran Vandersloot killed her, but what did he do to her/with her? Some missing person cases, Amy Bradley, Moore Murray, I should agree. Where are they? Any missing person who just vanished into thin air like Paula Jean Wilden. Madeleine McCann and John Benet Ramsey are two cases where I feel like the families were involved, and I would like 100% confirmation. Are the Texarkana Moonlight murders related to the Zodiac murders? Who was Jack the Ripper and what was his motive once and for all? I heard a theory that murders were random and not related, and the Jack the Ripper persona was made up by newspapers. I don't know if I believe this. The disappearance of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. While there's been no confirmation that a crime actually happened, there's a lot about the circumstances of their deaths that could suggest foul play. It's just as likely that their deaths weren't murder, but it's still a fascinating case regardless. It's a grim lesson in never going into a foreign country, on unfamiliar trails, without a guide or proper supplies. Always tell people where you're going and when you plan to be home, folks. Prepare extensively and then double-check your preparations. It could literally save your life. https://youtube.btg1nwscbfb for a more in-depth video can be found here.